It is Tuesday, March 4th, and we have a big show today. President Trump being proven right yet again, as CNN and the media forced to admit and correct the record. We're going to show you also Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, desperate to get back on Trump's good side, realizing finally the awful spot he put himself in. Tariffs going into effect this morning at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time. The trade war has begun, and why it's good. Wait till you see this, how all the talking points about tariffs being inflationary will soon be proven wrong. And big news out of the DOJ, Pam Bondi and Kash Patel obtaining truckloads of new JE documents, and they found the gatekeepers responsible for covering all this up, finding, firing, and perp walking the head of the New York FBI field office. Will there be criminal charges? That's what we're hearing, and more stories as well from around the country. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. If you were someone who watched Trump's first term, watched as the system, the corrupt establishment system, the media, allied nations even, watched as they all unfairly and wrongly portrayed and maligned our president, well, this segment will bring you great joy because once again, Trump was proven right, and the media has been forced to correct the record, eat their own words. In 2018, Trump warned all of Europe in front of the world at the UN General Assembly that Germany and Europe would become totally dependent on Russia for their energy needs, warning them, if you don't stop and reverse course, stop the giant oil and gas deal you're making with Russia, change course immediately, he said, or you'll be dependent on Russia. At the time, the German delegation at the UN were caught laughing. They laughed out loud during Trump's speech. The American press crucified Trump over this speech, calling it an embarrassment, saying it was another lie. Well, it wasn't only true then. Now, 7 years later, and it was very prescient. The EU and Germany specifically receiving now over 60 to 70% of all their energy from Russia. Europe, it turns out, is funding both sides of this Ukraine war, paying for Ukraine's weapons while buying their oil and gas from Russia. It's like a giant death circle, funding this death circle, and Trump called it 7 years ago. Watch as CNN's Jake Tapper now forced to admit this, admit Trump was right. He was right all along. Watch.
That Europeans were actually buying more Russian oil and gas than they were helping Ukraine in terms of the aid. So in some ways, the Europeans are funding both sides in this war.
Germany will become totally dependent on Russian energy if it does not immediately change course. Here in the Western Hemisphere, we are committed to maintaining our independence from the encroachment of expansionist foreign powers.
Well, I have to say, I think it's very sad when Germany makes a massive oil and gas deal with Russia, where you're supposed to be guarding against Russia, and Germany goes out and pays billions and billions of dollars a year to Russia. So we're protecting Germany, we're protecting France, we're protecting all of these countries, and then numerous of the countries go out and make a pipeline deal with Russia, where they're paying billions of dollars into the coffers of Russia. So we're supposed to protect you against Russia, but they're paying billions of dollars to Russia, and I think that's very inappropriate. And the former chancellor of Germany is the head of the pipeline company that's supplying the gas.
In another story, Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, feeling the walls closing in on him this morning. We reported last week that before Trump met Zelensky in the Oval Office, Zelensky was treading on thin ice, that the minerals deal was his last opportunity, not Ukraine's, Zelensky's last opportunity to be part of the solution in ending this war, and that he failed bigly, that there had been high-level meetings and consensus across allied countries that Zelensky may need to go, either resign or be replaced that he's the primary detriment to peace. Trump now confirming it, saying it publicly yesterday. Watch.
Everybody has to get into a room, so to speak, and we have to make a deal. And the deal can be made very fast. It should not be that hard a deal to make. It could be made very fast. Now, maybe somebody doesn't want to make a deal. And if somebody doesn't want to make a deal, I think that person won't be around very long. That person will not be listened to very long. Because I believe that Russia wants to make a deal. I believe certainly the people of Ukraine want to make a deal. They've suffered more than anybody else.
That was yesterday. Think about that. Think about how terrible a spot Zelensky put himself in. He, as the leader of the free world, saying, you won't be in charge much longer. You are the only person, one tiny person with no leverage, standing between multiple superpowers, multiple power centers. 3 power centers surrounding you, surrounding Zelensky, Europe, the US, and Russia. Zelensky sitting in the middle, dictating to 2 of them, demanding in the Oval Office that Europe and the US keep giving him more money, give me more money, acting as if he's the one calling the shots. That was Friday. Well, how things have changed in a matter of a few days. The Trump administration pausing all foreign aid, military aid to Ukraine this morning. Reported yesterday they were considering this. Well, they have now done it. Watch.
Reporting the United States is pausing all U.S. military aid to Ukraine until President Trump determines the Ukrainians show a commitment of good faith peace negotiations. That's according to a senior Trump administration telling Fox. This is not a permanent termination of aid. It is a pause. The orders are going out right now. The official said this in response to Ukrainian President Zelensky's conduct over the last week and his words over the weekend. So it's all stopping, Brian.
And this isn't new aid dollars, by the way. This is the last few billion that the Biden administration squeezed through before leaving office. Billions in the pipeline that were appropriated and scheduled to ship to Ukraine. Trump just canceled it, vowing to completely cut Ukraine off if Zelensky doesn't get on board. Well, what do you know? Suddenly, this morning, Zelensky posting on X, he's ready for peace, ready to follow President Trump's lead to bring peace in Ukraine, writing, my team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts. Also adding a halfway type apology, saying the way the White House meeting turned out was regrettable. Yeah, that's not enough. Trump wants him to be put in his place. He wants to make sure he gets it, that this never happens again. Watch.
I have been told by a senior official here that nothing's going to happen with this minerals deal until Zelensky goes in front of cameras and makes an explicit public apology for the way that he behaved himself, behaved in the Oval Office with that meeting.
In another story, AG Pam Bondi confirming last night that she has received truckloads of hidden Epstein files, that they were delivered by her deadline at Friday, 8 a.m., last Friday, saying we got them all Friday at 8 a.m., thousands of additional documents. I have the FBI going through them now. They're in the possession of the FBI. Cash is going to get me a detailed report as to why all these documents and evidence had been hidden and withheld. Watch this.
But, you know, Sean, I gave them a deadline of Friday at 8 a.m. to get us everything. And a source had told me where the documents were being kept. Southern District of New York, shock. So we got them all by, hopefully all of them, Friday at 8 a.m., thousands of pages of documents. I have the FBI going through them, and Cash is also, now that we have Cash here, it's a game changer, of course, and Cash is going to, Director Patel, is going to get us a detailed report as to why the FBI withheld all of those documents.
Okay, I want to be clear because I think people got frustrated because they were expecting more. You were expecting more, and you didn't find out less than 24 hours before the release. You got a whistleblower that confirmed that there were way more documents that they were supposed to turn over, and then you found out just before that.
Well, sure. And you're looking at these documents going, these aren't all the Epstein files. You know, there were flight logs, there were names and victims' names. And we're going, where's the rest of the stuff? And that's what the FBI had turned over to us. And so a source said, whoa, all this evidence is sitting in the Southern District of New York. Yep. So based on that, I gave them the deadline, Friday at 8, a truckload of evidence arrived. It's now in the possession of the FBI. Cash is going to get me and himself, really, a detailed report as to why all these documents and evidence had been withheld.
And it turns out we now know who's been gatekeeping these Epstein documents. Pam Bondi ordering her friend and underling, FBI Director Kash Patel, to find out who was responsible for this. On Friday, she ordered him, figure this out. Who were the ones who were withholding this? Who's behind this? Who's been behind this cover-up? Who are the gatekeepers of this secret? Well, we now know. Head of FBI Field Office in New York, James Dennehy, this man was found out and forced to resign Friday, accused of being behind the cover-up and directing his office not to comply and resist the new Trump administration. Roll the tape.
So who's in charge at the New York FBI field office? Who's withholding Epstein docs from the Attorney General? James Dennehy is running the show there. There he is. This is the guy who emailed his whole staff to dig in after Trump took office. And don't forget that James Comey's daughter is an assistant U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. She worked on the Epstein and Maxwell cases. She's kind of knee-deep in this. Epstein was facing sex trafficking charges in Lower Manhattan. Where's all that paperwork? The FBI seized computers, surveillance videos, banking records, file cabinets, and photographs from all of Epstein's properties in New Mexico, the Virgin Islands, Palm Beach, and in New York. The Justice Department also gave Epstein a sweetheart non-prosecution deal 17 years ago. Where are those files? The Bureau of Prisons. Where are those files? You remember where Epstein killed himself? I asked Bill Barr about that, why everything seemed to go wrong that night.
When I first heard all the information and all the coincidences here, I was suspicious.
What were the coincidences? I mean, those were a lot of coincidences.
Well, one of the cameras was out.
Right.
He was supposed to have a cellmate. The cellmate left. They didn't replace the cellmate. And the guards who were supposed to check him every half hour didn't check him.
My EMT source said he was on the scene immediately to pull Epstein's body out to the morgue. And when he got to the cell, he saw 7 people there touching Epstein's body and moving stuff around.
In another story, Trump's tariffs have gone into effect this morning at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Time today. All imports from Canada and Mexico are now being taxed at 25%, will owe a 25% duty. Likewise, the universal tariffs on China have just been increased as well to 20% as of this morning. Let the trade wars begin. China has filed a lawsuit with the WTO and promised retaliatory action. Likewise, Canada just imposed $108 billion in retaliatory tariffs. They're nervous, very, very nervous. Watch.
I want to speak first directly to the American people. We don't want this. We want to work with you as a friend and ally. And we don't want to see you hurt either. But your government has chosen to do this to you. As of this morning, markets are down, and inflation is set to rise dramatically all across your country. Your government has chosen to put American jobs at risk, at the thousands of workplaces that succeed because of materials from Canada or because of consumers in Canada, or both.
Premier Doug Ford telling Canadians today that Canada, he says, will win this trade war. That's not true. They can't win this. There is nothing to win because to Trump, he's fine with keeping the tariffs in place. That's what he wants. Doug Ford thinks this is a negotiation. And it may be partially, but all Trump really cares about is equalizing.
I said, number one, I don't start a tariff war, but we're going to win this tariff war. Right off the hop, I've directed the LCBO, we're the largest purchaser of alcohol in the world, to remove every bit of U.S. alcohol off the shelves. I know my good friend, the governor of Kentucky, he's losing his mind right now. I said, you better talk to your president. Mitch McConnell, senior senator from Kentucky, they're losing their mind.
The talking point we're going to start to hear over and over again is that these tariffs will cause inflation. That's what the Democrats will say. That's what the media will constantly say. But it's 100% false. Printing dollars causes inflation. Issuing more currency into the system causes inflation. Tariffs don't. There is nothing at all inflationary about tariffs. In fact, with Trump's economic and trade policy, if anything, it's deflationary. He's drastically shrinking government spending, fixing the national debt, shrinking the money supply is de facto deflationary. These tariffs momentarily could lead to some higher prices. Yes, there may be some temporary pain, but ask any honest broker out there, is it the right thing to do? 100% it's the right thing to do, and it's already working. Just 5 weeks in, and it's already working. We're seeing signs that it's working. The 10-year Treasury rate has now fallen back to 4%, which means the housing market will soon be jimmied out of the lockup that it's been in for nearly 4 years. Huge manufacturing companies also already beginning breaking ground on relocating their plants into the U.S. Yesterday, TSMC, a leading Taiwanese chip giant, announcing it's pouring $100 billion into building manufacturing plants here in the US of A. Watch.
Today, Taiwan Semiconductor is announcing that they will be investing at least $100 billion in new capital in the United States over the next short period of time to build state-of-the-art semiconductor manufacturing facilities. I think mostly it's going to be in Arizona, which is what I understand, which is a great state. I like it because I won it, but I won most of them, actually. So.
Bottom line, in 6 to 12 months, the U.S. economy will look very different than it does today in a good way. We'll be on our way to transitioning from an importing nation to an exporting nation. We'll have a real U.S. manufacturing base back, something that's been gone for 70 years. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.